Hello, everybody. It's Larry Johnson, your host for A Principles Voices, and I'm delighted to have with me a young man, and he is young compared to me, Nathan Crankfield, who's coming to me from Kansas, Wichita. Right? Is that it? No, is that where you're going?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas. Oh, I got it wrong. Kansas City, Missouri, and Nathan has a really interesting job, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he is a father, and you have one, two children,
Two children. Yep.
two children.
Under two and a half.
Under
Yep.
two and a half. Now you see, I don't see any deep circles under his eyes, though. He must be pretty energetic because I know what those are like. Mine are a lot older. But so, and he studied. What was it you studied again in school?
Criminal
Criminal
justice and
justice.
philosophy.
And oh, there's a combo. All right, okay. And he was in the army for a while, and now he's doing something demonstrably different, but I suspect a little more rewarding. Would you say it's more
That-
rewarding?
I would say so for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
It has more eternal impact. So
eternal impact. He almost said compensation, but he was going to say this. No, he is the national sales manager for the Hallow Prayer app. Welcome. Now,
thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Larry.
now I presume you use the product.
I do. Yes.
Okay, all
I
right.
was listening to it on the way to work this morning.
All right, as I do as well. Um, and so, have you? Tell me a little bit about how you came to work for them.
Yeah, so I was very lucky, very blessed in my journey to Hallow. So I first heard about the app. One of my best friends from high school, his name's Alessandro DeSanto. He's now our CFO and one of our co-founders. He told me about the app, this summer of 2018, spring of 2018. He calls me one day. We're catching up. He came to my range school graduation. I visited him when he was working on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs, and he calls me up summer of 2018 and says, "Hey, like, uh." I think I'm quitting my job. And I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do? And he gives me this whole story of his friend Alex Jones, who I had met when we were all in college when we were 21. And he's telling me about how he's going to quit his job and start this prayer app. And I'm like, okay, sounds like a great thing. I think that'll be really helpful for a lot of people. But never would he have imagined it would become what it is today. But I donate to the Kickstarter. When they're doing their Kickstarter, they all drain their 401ks and all of the money that they had. They max out their credit cards to start Hallow. And it was really awesome just to kind of see them just go full force into this thing. And so I'm kind of watching it from afar. This is the same year that I was getting out of the army the following summer. And so we launched December of 2018 is when the app launched. So that next summer, I moved up to Cincinnati when I took a job in Cincy, and I started doing some volunteer stuff with them. I would go to like a parish launch with him. I remember going to a conference with him, and just kind of like tabling or just kind of promoting and getting it out there as best I could. So started dabbling with working with them back then. But then fast forward a couple years later, they were starting their sales team. I was looking for a new job as I was leaving my role at Benedictine College here. That was when I was living in Atchison, Kansas,
Yeah.
and moving to Denver with my then fiance, now wife. And they were like, "Why don't you come work for us? Why don't you come do this sales thing?" And I was like, "Okay, let's give it a shot." So I always say I got in at the family and friends round when they were still hiring people that they just knew. It was before we were, we just listed 17 roles back in July of 2025, and we had over 7,000 applicants. And so had I had to apply during a time like that, I don't think there's any way that I'm sales manager at Hallow today. So I'm very blessed to have been good friends with Alessandro and to have gotten in when I did.
Well, there's a third category when you're in that range. It's called friends, family, and fools. But obviously, you're not a fool. Now, but I want to go back and so a Hallow. How many were there? Two or three people that were in it in first? Three founders, two or three founders.
Three co-founders. That's correct. Yeah,
Okay,
three co-founders, and they say a founding team of about 5 to 7.
okay. And so then they essentially did a Kickstarter, but then put all their own money into this thing, including maxing out some credit cards. And that's kind of scary to make it work. So then they did not go the venture capital route.
They
And
did eventually.
oh,
So
they
yeah,
did.
so they did. Yeah, they did a seed round. I think in 2019. I don't want to misspeak on that, so I'm not the expert of the whole timeline of the venture capital rounds, but I believe 2019, and then I think we did Series A. We almost did them annually there for a while. It was like Series A was in 2020 or 21, and then Series B in 22, and then I believe we've done it up through Series C at this point.
And I presume that was after you, with the proverbial you, had put all their money into it to demonstrate the concept. So then
Correct.
the capital came as a point, as acceleration, as fuel to grow. That's the way it was brought
Certainly.
into it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and a great time too, obviously. 20 they launched in Advent, so December of 2018, as I said, and then 2019 was kind of this get it out there. Nobody knew who it was. And then when COVID hit in 2020, that was really when they started to become more known, right? People were starting to look for spiritual things they can do remote.
Mm-hmm.
So the time was obviously very providential, we would say. And
Oh,
it was
I'd
just
say
something
that.
that a lot of people needed. So 2020 was a huge spike in usage, and then it's from there grown exponentially.
So let me ask you, what does a sales manager do? Because I presume it's like I bought it on a point to point sale. I mean,
Mhm.
so what do you do? As they would say, when I was the first vice president in a college, a young student said to me, Mr. Johnson, I know you're vice president, but what is it you do? So so what is it you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we sell obviously individual subscriptions. And so an individual person can go in and buy an account or buy a subscription. You can have a free account or you can have a paid subscription. And then you can buy family accounts. What we do is we sell it at scale. And so we partner with a Catholic school, for example, and say they have 500 students at the school. They can buy it for $5 to $7 per student, and all the faculty staff is also included in that. And so then they're giving access to the students. The students can pray at home with their families. We give them additional resources like teacher guides, curriculum guides, walkthroughs for the teachers. We train the teachers on how to use it, and they have a dedicated success rep that works with them throughout that partnership. And so we have partnerships with schools, parishes, universities, dioceses, Catholic organizations that give, other nonprofits that give access to their employees for a full year and things like that.
So but it's under the same. It's a subscription. It's the license model. So it's a periodic fee. Now, I know that it's Catholic in its orientation. And I'm a Protestant. Do you sell it to any Protestant schools or anything as well?
Yeah, we haven't yet. I think we've had small partnerships with certain Protestant schools. We think that it'll be something we do down the line, more
Mm-hmm.
intentionally on the B2B side. With individuals, though, we have almost 40% of our users are non-Catholic. So we reach a lot of non-Catholics through the app itself.
Mm-hmm.
But we, on the B2B side, I think our main approach or our philosophy is just really trying to master what we're doing on the Catholic side because it's what we know, and then roll it out
Yeah,
to
that's
the
smart.
organizations that operate a lot differently than what we're used to. And so, our earlier conversation, we've always kind of thought about, especially on the church side specifically, schools would be pretty easy to do. We just haven't really done a lot of outreach, but we've met with a number of Protestant schools. I know we've partnered with a handful of them, and we have no, I would say, hesitancy or anything against partnering with a Protestant school or even some private schools and charter schools have been in touch with us. But then on the church side, our plan has kind of been, all right, let's go. We're partnering with Catholic churches and then probably extend it to Orthodox churches and kind of
Yes,
liturgical Protestants, and then get kind of
yes.
further down the line into, churches that operate in a very different manner. And so the hope is that down the line, we want to help everybody pray. And so we try to make it as open a space and as welcoming a space for everyone there while being dedicated to our Catholic faith and
Mm-hmm.
Catholic values. But I think it does a great job of reaching people in such a wide range of places in their faith, quite literally around the world. The app's available in 8 different languages, used in 150 different countries on a regular
So
basis. And so
you ran. Let's
it's
slow
awesome.
down a little bit. How many languages? How many
Eight,
languages? And how many countries?
150. We say 150 plus, but
So
yeah.
so then, I'm curious. All the content, is it live recorded, or is some of the translation AI, or how does it work?
We are very ardently against using AI voices in the app.
Thank
We
you.
think you should always pray with an individual. Yes.
Yeah.
I see there's specifically one prayer app out there that is becoming more and more popular that has like an AI Jesus and things. And our philosophy is pretty hard against that. So we use real voices all the time. Now, do we use AI as prompts sometimes? So we don't let AI write the prayers, and we don't let AI record or say the prayers. That can't be the voice or the actual author. But we use it as prompts or looking up, we're writing the story of a saint, for example. Do we use AI for some of the, gathering some of that information? Yes,
Mhm.
but we don't use it outside of that. But so when we translate it, we have a team of contractors, different people that work. Some people work full time for us in Poland, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Italy, in the Philippines that are actually translating the content and then recording the content, working with different voices and people to get that content recorded.
So, how long was it after the application was live? Did you go international?
Mhm. International started in the fall of 2021, so it would have been almost 3 years,
Hmm.
just shy of 3 years when we started
Well,
making the international push.
let me give you a comment that came back from a Protestant friend of mine. He is the chaplain of a local university and very thoughtful guy. Here's something he said. It's impressed me too. When you're doing one of the devotions, and I'll often do, where's the one here? Come on, come on. Uh, Here we go. This daily gospel here,
Hmm.
and it'll say it's tended to be a semi meditation on the front end. So it says find a place where it's calm and blah blah blah. Well, with each instruction, there's plenty of time to do what they've asked you to do. So when they read the scripture, it says, and think about this. Well, there's plenty of time. You don't have to respond to me. And he noticed it immediately too. He said, a lot of these apps, it's just like boom, 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 boom. It's like they're sort of projecting at you. They're not engaging you. And that's one thing the
Hmm.
pace of this is done very, very well. And you can just take that along to your bosses and tell them, all right, that
That's great.
the pace is done very well. Now, I do have another thing. I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but I haven't been able to. What version of the scripture is used for all the quotations in here?
That's a great question. I believe it's the Revised Standard Version, the Catholic RSV, but it could
Mhm.
also be the New American Bible. I'm not 100% positive on that.
Well, I use RSV. Now there is a new RSV, which is a little more up, to the language. I'm still in the thou thing, but and then the other one
Mhm.
was the what was it?
The
The
New American Bible.
New
There's a New
American
American
Bible.
Bible Revised Edition, which I believe is what we use for mass readings, for Catholic mass readings, but
Well,
I'm only 80% sure about that.
it's very friendly. I liked it. I liked it, and
Hmm.
it's there are a couple out there that I don't particularly like. I won't mention which ones they are, but there's one that's very popular in the Protestant world that I think really shouldn't be called a translation; it should be called a paraphrase because there are whole phrases that have
The
just been
Message
lopped
or
in.
something like that.
Oh no, it proclaims itself as a translation, but I don't think it
Oh,
is
okay.
because there's so much idiomatic material that's added to it, to give it a certain
Yeah,
slant theologically. I'm going, oh,
sure.
don't get, and
I
when I was
just
in
looked at it. Is the N? It's the NRSV. I just
in
saw it in the app.
the new Revised Standard Version, huh?
That's right.
Well, I really like it. I may have to get a version of that, a copy of that. Mine is the traditional RSV. It's been around a little bit, as you can see, but
Yeah,
um, um, but anyway, I really like. I'm going to look at that because that really impressed me. And then I'm not a big fan of this other one that's so popular among certain evangelical churches because it's too tilted in their direction. And
sure.
my wife and I will be sitting there and they'll be reading this thing and we'll go, "Do you see that in here? I don't see that in here." And so the whole phrases, and then some of the language is dumbed down so that it doesn't have the impact
Yeah,
and the majesty uh, that that it should have, in my view. But so, how long have you
sure. I
been
know
there
what you
now?
mean.
5 years, six
I've
years?
been there almost 4.5.
Okay,
Well, a little bit. I guess I got a couple months till 4.5, but
okay.
I had 4 years this past early summer.
So, have you met Jonathan Rumi?
I have met Rumi. Yes, I get asked a lot of, have you ever met, XYZ when I talk about working at Hallow, especially when I'm out speaking in the world. I have not met Wahlberg, but I have met Jonathan Rumi. No Chris Pratt either, but I have met Jonathan Rumi. It
Okay.
was in like my third month at Hallow. He came on a retreat with us, which was really special.
Hmm. Well, I've not met him. I do know Bishop Barron.
Oh,
Who
nice.
I know Bishop Barron, and he's been a friend of Rumi's for about 20 years, actually. And he apparently, Mr. Rumi was in a desert, a spiritual desert, for a very, very long time. And that this role that he had in The Chosen just sort of, well, it was providential, shall we say, and
Hmm.
has given him his and for the longest time I would not look at The Chosen, primarily because so much of what Christian media is more or less propaganda, and I don't
Hmm.
need that. And then when Jordan Peterson interviewed Dallas Jenkins, the producer, and I heard that interview, I'm going, this may be worth a look. And so then I looked at it and I was really, really impressed. Um, for such a small budget, there was incredible production values. And then on top of that, they'd gone to great lengths to make sure that it was accurate, that to create viable backstories, and then have all the different faith groups, even the Jews represented. And I love the fact that they portray Jesus as others would see him, not the other way around.
Hmm.
You see, how would you see him? And the thing that, here I am with theological education, and I can tell you the thing that really impressed me about Rumi's portrayal, and I'm sure that it had a lot to do with the script as well, is that Jesus, he just sort of took people as he found them.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to get to know you. Now what's next? Kind of thing. He didn't go in and immediately make prescriptions on these people. He didn't prejudge these people. And to me, that's the power of this of the Christian faith. Is that he, you know, I was told that you grew up thinking, yeah, he takes you as you are, but that isn't often how it comes across. And yet, when you see it, it's like, oh, okay. And of course, as we know, he engendered some backlash on some of that. I like to say to people, you have to generate some serious enemies to get crucified. Serious. uh, they don't crucify Mr. Rogers, and
That's
and
true.
and that's often how he's portrayed. This kind of nice guy,
Yeah.
go along to get along, and the worst ones are those paintings from the late 19th, early 20th century where it looked like a good stiff wind would blow him over, and
Hmm.
pale, sickly, thin. This guy was a first century Jew. Probably had a pretty good physique on him, Nathan. He had to, you know.
That's
I
right.
mean, come on, let's get real here. But you don't want a muscular Jesus. Oh no, that's no, you don't want that. You want some frail thing like I'm
It
Blake.
seems
Blake.
dangerous. Yeah.
It's called being dangerous, but not being a danger. And there's the
Hmm.
difference. Jesus was a very dangerous person. He could wrap you up, and you'd be like, "Wow, what just happened?" but but he was not dangerous. Very compassionate, very loving, forgiving, but uh, he would tell it like it is. And
Hmm.
um, have you seen The Chosen? Haven't you?
I have. Yeah.
Well, my favorite scene has to be season two, where he's been invited to a Shabbat dinner by Mary Magdalene and Matthew. And there's one other disciple that's there, I forget which one. And they're sitting down to dinner, and there's a knock at the door. And it goes up, and it's two Pharisees. And they do a quick eye scan of the room, and they're going, oh, we don't want to get any closer. You got a prostitute, you got a tax collector, who else? We can't
Hmm.
get any closer than this. But Jesus, yeah, that didn't phase him. He says, come on in and join us. Come on and have a good time. You know, the look on those guys' faces, it was like, if we get any closer, we're going to catch it. We better back up, back up, back up. And see, in this world, there are very few situations where there's that kind of straight line that's been drawn in society, where these men
Hmm.
really thought their faith was at stake if they got any closer, and
Right.
and was in communion with these people. And I say to people, what the two biggest complaints of Jesus were during his time? They say what? And I say, well, hanging around the wrong kind of people and going to way too many parties. And
Hmm.
he hung around. He was down. What was his response? I go where the sick are. I go where there's a need. You know, you know. I'm not going to go where everyone's already redeemed and holy. I mean, they don't need me. You know, I'm going somewhere else. And there's a
That's right.
sermon. There's a sermon illustration that I heard a number of years ago, and and they were talking about Jesus, and I remember the minister said, "And there's Jesus sitting over there at a table full of sinners, having a wonderful time, just enjoying their company." You know,
Hmm.
that's and I really see that in The Chosen, the way it's put together. And but the
Sure.
personalities are there. I mean, oh yeah, you got the personalities. And one of my, I guess my next favorite scene, Nathan, is the calling of Matthew. If you remember that scene, he's
Hmm.
walking through town, and Matthew's in his booth, and they're maybe 25, 30 feet away, and he just looks to Matthew and says, "Matthew, follow me." Now they had a couple of brief encounters before, but all of a sudden it just like, oh, really? Well, he has Simon Peter, and he has what's Simon Peter's brother? I can't even think of the Andrew.
Andrew.
Andrew, couldn't think. And they're standing there. Well, they just had some rather unsavory interactions with this man, and they knew what he was. And so Peter says to Simon says to Jesus, uh, uh, "That's really different, Jesus." And Jesus says, "Simon, get used to different. Get used to
Hmm.
different." And I love that. I love that. Yeah. Get used to different.
Yeah.
I'm breaking all the rules here. We're going to do this
Yeah, it's
differently.
amazing. That's
And
right. Yeah.
you were
Yeah,
going
and I
to say
think
something?
that the thing that you're speaking to, I think, is this what Aristotle kind of calls the virtuous middle.
Mm-hmm.
The mean being and the virtue. A lot of people struggle with this because it's so easy to live in the extremes, philosophically, psychologically. Just
Yeah.
it's easier on the brain to just rush and live in the extremes. That's why we're so polarized, I think, as a nation, as a society. But a lot of people want to do either one of the two extremes. They either take the Pharisees approach, and we have people like this in the broad Christian church, where
Mm-hmm.
people say, I can't associate with these sinners. Everybody that doesn't think exactly like me is evil, and I can't talk with them. I have to cut people off if they th see things differently than me, etc. And then you have Christians that go out there on the exact other side and say, Jesus says to everybody, come as you are. He dined with sinners and prostitutes, and they stay around. They may get baptized or, have a conversion experience, and they say, oh, I'm going to change my life, but they still hang out with their friends who get drunk every weekend or are still doing drugs or doing these things. And then they see themselves falling right back into it
Yeah.
because they're put themselves on this island and think that, oh, I can live this Christian life alone because Jesus did it, so I can do it too. And Jesus, when he sends out the 72, he sends people out in pairs. He never sends anybody out to say, hey, you just go do it by yourself.
No.
And I expect you to survive. And I always remind people that, yeah, Jesus dined with prostitutes and sinners. He also had 12 closest friends, and 11 of them became saints. One of them was really
Yeah.
problematic. 11 of his closest 12 friends became saints.
Yeah.
And a lot
Well.
of times when he was with these prostitutes and sinners, he brought those 11 future saints, huge saints, no less, along with him. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
out there by himself hanging out with prostitutes and sinners for months on end or years on end, which a lot of people try to do. So there's this tough balance that challenges all of us, no matter which side you lean towards
Mm-hmm.
or tend towards, that challenges you if you feel like you're a little bit more isolated and want to go beyond in a Christian bubble and island, that Jesus says, no, get out there and be in the world, but not of the world. On the other side, you're not also supposed to just be immersed and in a culture and friend group and family or whatever it is that's just surrounded by sin and tempting you constantly to the point where you are falling away from your faith. So it's a hard thing to balance. That's why it's called picking up your cross, right? It's
Yeah.
not
Um,
necessarily a joyride, which Chosen does a good job of depicting that. I think of just showing that it's difficult.
the Aristotle middle, understanding that is going to say something about that. Um, well, you'd recall the woman at the well once those other guys had left, and he just says to the woman, "All right, you're forgiven. Now go and don't sin again. Just now leave that life. Go on. It's over with."
Right.
And of course they were ready to stone her to death. I loved it. Now, what do you think he drew in the dirt? There's all this speculation when he wrote in the dirt, and then one by one they walked away. What do you think it was?
That's a good question. I definitely do not know. Do you know what it was?
Well, I don't know, but one of the
Or
things
is
that's
it
been
just like a
proposed
belief? Yeah.
that he was writing their own sins in the dirt.
Oh, I have heard that before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which he could do.
Oh, for sure.
And that would have
He
shocked the
did
hell
greater
out of
things
him.
than that. Yeah.
He'd have shocked the whoa, this guy, don't get too close, you'll get burned.
Seriously.
And but yeah, I have a feeling that's probably similar. I can just see him doing something like that. Not
Hmm.
not calling anybody out per se, because he did. The time that he really called people out was, oh, Jordan Peterson had done this research on what really is taking God's name in vain. And he went back to the Hebrew, went to the Old Testament, and it's not really using the oath. It's using God's name to feather your own nest, to further your own career. So if someone says, I'm a Christian this or I'm a Christian that, and add your trade to it, that is using God to verify or support what you're doing. He said, that is what it is. So if you think about that, that's why he was so hard on the guys who were selling the animals for the sacrifice and the money changers in the temple before Passover, because they
Hmm.
were doing a good service. They were the other thing, but they were within the temple grounds, which means they had the approval of the temple leaders, and they had sort of the right real estate, so to speak, and that's why he was so bad on them.
Right.
No, do it outside. Don't do it in here. It's okay outside, but don't use God as an excuse. It's like being in a national park and being the approved vendor. You've got the inside track. You know,
Hmm.
and they were an approved vendor,
Yeah.
and it just dawned on me, yeah, that's what these guys are doing. Because in of itself, they all had to have an animal sacrifice. They all had to do this. That was part of Jewish life. And then it just dawned on me, oh yeah, this is why. It's where they were, not what they were doing. And because they
Right.
had the imprimatur of the temple on them. Who knows? The Pharisees are probably getting a cut. I mean, the temple leaders are probably getting a cut. They probably were.
That would make sense for sure.
Now I want you to think a little something. What is an experience you had as a result working for Hallow that you thought was maybe like wow or unexpected, or really gave you a sense of either accomplishment, or maybe you thought, whoa, I've certainly stepped into something. You want to share anything with us, please?
Man, I think there's been probably countless ones getting to speak at different opportunities. I mean, I get to lead retreats at times for principals or for teachers at a school. I'm
Mm-hmm.
speaking next week in Phoenix to a room full of superintendents. And that's been really life-giving for me because, my faith journey, I became Catholic at a Catholic school. And so my family really, I was baptized Lutheran. My dad was baptized the same day as me, but was raised by a Southern Baptist mom, but really never practiced his faith up until the time, I was after I was out of college. He started to really kind of discover his own faith and is still very much on his own journey with that. But um, we weren't going to church at all by the time I was 10. And so when I turned 13, I was in eighth grade, I became Catholic at my Catholic school. And so for me to be able to give back and work with Catholic schools and help them on their mission and help them to form students in prayer, which is what really ended up changing my life later on in college, is just beautiful. I mean, just all of that, just that experience. And that's what I get to wake up and do every day at schools and now with parishes as well is unbelievable and certainly extremely impactful in my life and in my daily morale, my purpose, and all of those things in my faith journey. Getting to experience and travel and do that as well. Now getting to see the company. This wasn't true necessarily in 2021, but now getting to represent Hallow in different places, meeting different people. I just met somebody at my new office and said, "Yeah, I work for Hallow. It's a Catholic prayer meditation app." And they're like, "Oh, I have the app. I've heard of it, or I've used it before." Things like that. Now that it's so much more known, the brand has grown so significantly over the last 4 years. It's really cool and just exceptional experience. You get to work at a place where 7,000 people apply. and just for a handful, a dozen plus open jobs in just a matter of a couple weeks is really amazing. It's hard to not be extremely grateful when you stop and think, I'm glad they don't use this in a toxic way because they could if they wanted to become toxic and say, we could replace you in a heartbeat. You know how many people want your job? They never flash obviously in our faces because it's really a great place, but to just stop and with all humility recognize that and think about that myself sometimes.
Hmm.
If I, every job's gonna have its frustrations. I always say I'm in the 99th percentile of job satisfaction, but it's just amazing to just stop and think sometimes, like, man, if my job came open, a lot of people would be very excited and be applying for it in a heartbeat. And so, working at a place like that is just really cool. It's really fulfilling.
Well, I can tell you're really happy where you are. And the
Yeah,
fact that you love your job and you like what you do, you're in quite the minority in the workforce.
certainly.
You're very blessed, Nathan. And
Hmm.
to not only are you blessed with job satisfaction, but you're blessed and you're able to represent our Lord and in a way that's meaningful, in a way that really impacts other people's lives. And you're on the leading edge of a new way of delivery. Um, there's
Right.
I met two young men. I just did a podcast for them. They have this AI thing where they will go into a church or organization or a school, and they will essentially input all the history of, say, all the sermons or any other content that's been done there, and put it in this AI app. And you can just call stuff up and it'll come and it'll create stuff for you. It's like incredible. It has to be loaded in, of course. It's really a curated
Hmm.
large language model is what it is. But these two young kids, I mean, I think they're what I know I have grandsons their age probably, but anyway, that's I was fascinated by that. And the thing is called TAPOS, TAPOS, and there's a theological meaning for that, and I forgot what it is, quite frankly. Maybe but anyway,
Hmm.
it's TAPOS.
That's awesome. There's a
So
lot of great things happening for sure. I think there's a great movement and just a renewed energy and fervor and zeal in the church, broadly speaking, that is really cool to see. It's a really special time. And I think that, our CEO, he was just saying at our quarterly in-person meeting a couple weeks ago or a month ago now, he was saying about how like his whole dream when he started Hallow and vision for the company was just that we'd start to see just a slight turnaround in just this ever decreasing, it seemed ever decreasing for the last 75 years in church attendance, belief in God,
mm-hmm,
activity, conversions, all these things, which is
mm-hmm,
constantly going down. And he said he just wanted to see it turn around and
mm-hmm.
see if Hallow could maybe be, the 50th footnote in in world history of why that happened. And he's like, I feel like we've done that. Like we've started to see the turnaround and
Yes.
things have started to actually go back up. Bible sales were up like 23%, I think it was last year. There was a stat that came out recently, and the church attendance going up, belief in God, belief in church, practicing religion, all that amongst young people starting to turn around and increase. And so to be, yeah, we play a small role in that, but to play a small role at a company that's playing a role in that is really fun.
Well,
So definitely blessed. And
you probably know this, but young men are converting to Roman Catholicism at a ratio of 5 to 1. Did you know that?
mhm,
Men under
yeah,
35, young men. Um, in fact, back when last year, when leading up to the election, the Wall Street Journal did a whole series on the manosphere, the
hmm,
the manosphere. These young podcasters and all this, and they're being attracted to those, the Joe Rogans and that group and all that. So yeah,
sure.
and they're going to faith. They're going to conservative faith. They want the structure. They want something
Hmm.
meaningful in their life. Um, so anyway, well, you're obviously enjoying yourself, son. This is great.
We're having a good time. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
uh, and so, what's coming up for you? Going to any events or any trips soon?
Yeah, so I have the Catholic Leadership Summit is what it's called for NCEA, which is a National Catholic Educational Association. That's here next week in Phoenix, and so I'll be speaking at that on behalf of Hallow. to the superintendents there talking about prayer and just maintaining how prayer can help fuel us with joy for the mission because a lot of superintendents, principals, teachers, they're burnt out and they get exhausted and it's a tough and demanding job. And so get to encourage them a little bit, which I'm really excited about. And then yeah, have some great things lined up next year. I'm doing multiple men's conferences. I speak at men's conferences, I speak at youth conferences, speak at churches, and I do corporate speaking. And so I've been very blessed with just an increase in opportunity year over year with that. Looking forward to launching more people in my coaching program in January.
So
And we're
so we
very excited to be settled in Kansas City as well. So it's
so
a 2026 is going to be big.
so we didn't talk about your coaching program. Let's talk about that. Now, this is your own program and your own
Correct.
material. And as I understand it, it's a leadership program or a vocational program or some combination.
Yeah, there's sort of a leadership track to it that I do sometimes on kind of more of the executive coaching side. But the overall, organization, the thing that I run on the side is called Seeking Excellence. And so I've been
Seek,
podcasting now for,
seeking excellence, seeking
that's
excellence.
right.
And is there a website?
Yeah, seekingexcellence.us is the website.
You know,
And
of
so,
course.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, I've been podcasting for 5 years. I've done over 400 episodes focused on helping people to live to their fullest potential. And so I have what I call my 6 pillars of excellence: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, and professional, which I kind of view as like my life report card. And so the goal with the program, with the Excellent Life program that I coach people through, is giving them videos to go through, exercises that they go through, recommended reading that they go through, and then us meeting monthly to talk about being intentional and growing in those individual areas. And so there's things like, go ahead.
No, I was going to say these meetings are one on one.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
That's right. And so, yeah, having people go through exercises like a financial audit. So going through and helping them to create a budget if they don't have that. If giving is important to them, especially people coming from a faith background, helping them to set up and be intentional with their giving. For people going through the physical pillar, there's different like actual exercise challenges. There's a week of sleep challenge of just making sure you're getting good sleep and having good healthy sleep practices, lowering your screen time, reading challenges, all kinds of different things that you go through throughout the course of the program. Being intentional with your relationships, learning more about emotional intelligence, and learning more about your spiritual gifts. Learning about prayer, meditation, all those sorts of things. And so, a lot of times, it's taking people that are kind of feel like they're doing well in several different areas, but see that they have a lot of room to grow in some other areas. But what I do a lot is taking people kind of from that good to great, and taking people who are kind of, typically not just like totally lost and kind of like a mess in life, but feel like, oh, my career's going well. I go to the gym pretty often, but man, my spiritual life, my mental health, my sleep, my screen time, like just I have some areas that really need some shoring up and need some fixing. And so always just focus on where are you at currently? What's your vision for your life? And have exercises and videos to help people to walk through that and really get clarity on those things. And then how can we start to move towards that vision in these key areas of your life that matter most?
When did you decide to do this?
So like I said, the podcast was 5 years ago. I launched a program for the first time in 2025, and so I started to really write
Okay.
it up kind of mid 24 was when I started to
So
create it.
you're a philosopher and a guy with armed muscle, law enforcement, and now you're into this. So what was what was the inspiration for doing it in the first for the podcast 5 years ago? I mean, because this curriculum has now grown out of the podcast, is what you're telling me.
Correct. Yep. And the philosophy really came from just my own life experience of coming up in a place where I'm my dad's seventh kid by 5 different moms. My oldest 2 brothers were in and out of prison. My oldest brother did almost 15 years in federal prison. Just saw a lot of brokenness on both sides of my family growing up, from drug addiction to alcoholism, divorces, all kinds of things. And so by the time I get to college, I had kind of the foundations, the beginning stages of a faith life, but really just had this desire always to want to do something great, to want to go and make a name for myself, to do something impactful, to do things that matter, to avoid a lot of the same mistakes. I felt like a lot of people in my life and role models or just adults in my life had just repeated a lot of the same mistakes. And I had seen
Hmm.
it through so many siblings, being the seventh. I have one brother, two brothers who I would say I'm pretty proud of. But for the most part, it was a lot of just us cousins, aunts, uncles, like we're just repeating the same things over and over again. And I
Uh,
just had this profound idea that's really quite simple that, well, what if I didn't do that? What if I didn't do the exact same things that I see are leading to these outcomes? And I started following down that same path. But luckily, at 15, 16 years old, I had a
okay, now
pretty hard pivot and U-turned on a
that
lot of things.
was there any particular event that precipitated that?
Yeah, I got in big trouble. So I got caught with weed in my room when I was 15 years old, and my mom busted me and found out about my promiscuous lifestyle and all kinds of different things all at once. It was this huge blow up. Now, did I get in a ton of trouble? Not really, honestly. When I look back at the punishment I received for how bad I was being, it was pretty
Mm.
light, but it was
So you
enough. It was enough for me to say, okay, I need to start
okay?
getting things on the right track.
So you were not you weren't entangled with the law at that point then, just your parents.
Mm-mm. Just my parents. That's right.
Okay.
So
Um,
that was a huge turning point, but all of that was the driving force for me to just be a blank slate when I was in college and just say, okay, how can I become this person, this vision that I have for my life when I'm 30, 40, 50, 60 years old? How can I actually achieve that? And I just had the growth mindset to say, I think it's possible. I don't know how to get there, but I have these 4 years before I'm thrust into the world to try to figure it out. And so Army ROTC, no doubt, played a huge part of that. My time in the Army played a huge part in that, going deeper in my spiritual life and really just kind of starting to piece all this together. I did a lot of reading, listened to a lot of podcasts, YouTube, all these things, and just sought out mentors, whether in person or virtually at a distance, through books and other media that I consumed to just learn about life and just strive to see what excellence and success would look like for me.
so that's interesting. It was just your self determination. I am not going to repeat the mistakes of other members of my family. I see the results of their choices, and I'm not going to do the same. That's essentially what you're telling me. And you had that
That's
one
right.
jolt that was God's wake up call, I think. Like, Nathan, I'm getting your attention, son. Um,
Hmm.
I'm sure that's what it was. Um,
100%.
that's and you were smart enough and aware enough to take that counsel, because there are people who will see it and, oh no, I'm just, they always think they're going to be able to somehow avoid the consequences.
Hmm.
No, you can't. They're called natural consequences. um, they it was, we look to an example of King David. Well, David is the man out of God's own heart. However, he was an egregious sinner,
Hmm.
egregious murderer, adulterer, and God forgave him for those things, but he had to live with the consequences of those things. A terribly dysfunctional
Right.
family, everything else that went with that. Yeah, you have to pay the piper, so to speak, if you engage in that kind of behavior. So, well, I wanted to know how that all came. I would have never thought that you came out of that background. You have
Yeah.
really. I would have never thought that, Nathan. I tell you,
Yes.
you are a success story, my friend. I
Well,
hope
thank you.
I hope your parents are proud of you. Um, I really do, because they should
Thank
be.
you.
It
Yeah.
really is.
It's been, yeah, very, very blessed for sure. As we mentioned earlier, I'm a very blessed man without a doubt. And I think back to that. I talk about that moment when I was 15 often, when I'm giving my testimony and sharing my story, which I am blessed to get to do frequently throughout the year, and speaking events and through the podcast and other platforms. But I had, my best friend at the time who we got in trouble. Both of our moms were kind of conspiring together and we both got in
Mm.
trouble. And he went the other route of continuing down, continuing partying, and all those sorts of things. And I went the other route of pushing into my faith and discipline and trying to reject those things and figuring it out along the way. And I see both things, both the grace of God and my choice to cooperate with it. And so I believe very fervently in both of those things, that God gave me a lot of grace and he helped. And all I had to do was say yes and start to participate and not reject it and do a lot of hard work that came along with that. But I recognize that God did the heavy lifting, but you still have to participate in it. And I think a lot of times people get angry with God or reject God because they think, oh, like, why didn't God come to save
Yeah.
me? And it's like he did. He gave us the same opportunity, the same off ramp, and one of us chose to take it, one of us didn't. And I just had to do that many times in my life, and I didn't always do it, and I haven't always done it well, and I failed a lot of times along the way. But I turned 32 years ago, and this is my uh I turned 32 this year, and so this is my 10-year anniversary of getting out of college was this summer. And so just to think back to college me and where I'd hoped to be 10 years down the line, it's really beautiful and extremely moving. It often moves me to tears to think now
Okay.
being in the house that we just bought and having the two beautiful kids that I have, our dog, the job that I have, and everything that we get to do now. It's really amazing. God has blessed us in abundance for sure.
You are blessed, my friend. We need to do this again when you've written your book. Okay. I hope the
There we
book's
go.
coming
Yes,
soon. All right. Okay.
for
You know,
sure.
we've been having delightful conversation here, Nathan and I. Nathan is the national sales manager for Hallow, and I use the app. I'm sure he does too. And I want to thank him for his time, and I want to thank the audience for their time. And next week, somebody else of equal or more interest. I'll talk to you soon.